I'll go over a little bit about what I've discovered about strength and muscle. It's very different from what you've heard and what you've been told. It's a little similar to what we see in nutrition because we keep being told the wrong thing. And the wrong thing is obviously the wrong thing, yet people have heard it so long that they've been almost indoctrinated, and they believe in a method to go about solving a problem where even when they have failed for multiple years, they still fail to see that it's just the wrong method. So the journey started. Raise your hand if you know what OsteoStrong is, or if you saw them in the hall. Okay, awesome. So that was my first invention, and I developed that to treat my mother's osteoporosis. So my mother's diagnosed with osteoporosis. I wanted to figure out how she could fix the problem. She did not want to take any of the medications. There's some significant side effects that go along with those. Some of them have been overblown, but she just didn't want to do it. So I decided that I was going to try and read about any possible way that people have built bone density, try and understand who the outliers are, who has the highest bone density, and maybe I'll figure out how to build bone density in older people, and it's just something that we haven't been doing yet. So now this was before I did my PhD. So what I ended up doing is I discovered the population that has very high levels of bone density. It's gymnasts. And it has to do with the rate at which they contact the ground. When you hit the ground hard, you get multiples of your body weight. So when a gymnast does a dismount from the uneven bars, they sometimes get over 10 multiples of their own body weight. So the question is then, okay, well, how many multiples of body weight are required to develop bone density? We actually have that answer. The most important place that bone density is developed, or we want to develop it, is in the hip joint, because hip fractures tend to lead to an early death. So when these studies were performed using accelerometers and just general activity of people of different age cohorts, what they determined was if you're not meeting or exceeding 4.2 multiples of body weight through the hip, you're doing nothing. So when people say, I go for a walk for my bone density, you're doing nothing. I lift weights for bone density, you're doing nothing. Now, as an example, the world record squat, it's held by a friend of mine. His name is Matt Wenning. He was the 300-pound weight class. His squat is 1,200 pounds. So, heaviest squat ever. Even he does not exceed 4.2 multiples of body weight, breaking the world record. So, that is how much force is required for bone density. Now, you can get that through high impact, like I explained with the gymnasts, and hitting the ground with the velocity of wherever they're dropping from. Generally, you get 4.2 multiples of body weight from dropping 2 feet. So like if I were to jump off of this stage, that would be a good example of me getting 4.2 multiples of body weight. The problem with high impact activity, obviously, we're all told not to do it because there's a high risk of injury. So the engineering challenge was we need the benefits of high impact without any of the risks of high impact. So what I did was develop a series of impact emulation devices. So you place the body in an optimized position, so the back of the hand in line with the clavicle, and a 120-degree angle from upper to lower arm. So I can either produce or absorb the greatest amount of force in that position. Knowing that, 4 devices were created to emulate the positions that people naturally absorb high impact force so they can go well beyond what you would do with regular weight training and stimulate bone growth. Now, I believe 10 million unique users have been using OsteoStrong. There are 300 locations in 15 different countries. So it's spread real quick. And by the way, my mother no longer has osteoporosis. She reversed it very quickly. Has the bone density of a 30-year-old, and she's in her late 80s now. So just a problem she will not have to worry about. And it improved a lot of different things in her life. Like she gave up gardening. She gave up hiking. She gave up tennis. You know, she's not playing tennis anymore. But she's still gardening and hiking. And before, she was afraid to do those things because if she had a fragility fracture, there's a 50% chance of death within 1 year of a fragility hip fracture if you're over 50 years old. That's kind of crazy. Think about that. So you really want to avoid that kind of thing. And now that we have the technology with OsteoStrong, we can load the body properly in a very low-risk manner and stimulate bone growth. Now, the next part of my life sciences journey came when I did the first clinical trial, which was done at the University of East London. It's actually right by Olympic Park in London, if you guys remember the London Olympics. So right there was a clinic that was doing a study, and the researchers and physicians at the hospital that this was being done at, they were like, hey, can we kind of jump in? Like, we don't want to be test subjects, but we want to use the device. And most of these doctors were postmenopausal. So I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, there's no reason you wouldn't be able to do it. Their bone density all went up, but they all asked me the same question. So we're putting 6, 7, 8 times our own body weight through our hip joint. Is that, like, how does that compare with what people do in fitness? Now, fitness is something I had been interested in when I was younger. I played rugby at university, so I had to be very involved in that, and I was. And I had been training for 20 years, and I've had very little results from it. I know people don't really believe that when they look at me now, but before I turned 40, I didn't look particularly fit. I made the observation that when looking at these postmenopausal people who are putting force through their joints, they're using incredibly more force than the strongest people in the world because it's a more strategic way to load the body. And it seemed an awful lot to me when you have a postmenopausal population averaging 7 multiples of body weight that they're putting through their hip joint. We are really not tapping human potential with the way we exercise. And that is also evident in the fact that, and this is sort of just a casual observation, but when I ask reporters when I'm on a news show, they say, think of 20 people you know that are all about fitness. They work out all the time. They talk about their workouts all the time. They talk about their nutrition all the time. Out of the 20 people you know, and the reason I ask reporters is they have no horse in this race, so they're unbiased. How many of those 20 people are very obviously fit? And they kind of look at me and they don't really want to answer. And I said, I know what the answer is. The answer is 0. So why is it that we have millions of people engaging in heavy resistance exercise and almost no one actually looks like they do anything? You guys notice that? Like if you walk through a Planet Fitness and look at all the people, and then you walk through a Pizza Hut, it's like the same people. And it's not to beat up on the people who are working out in an inefficient way, but this was the inspiration for me to look at the fact that weightlifting sucks if you want to stimulate muscle. because of various inefficiencies. Now, in the last chapter of my book, Weightlifting is a Waste of Time, I talk about the genetic differences. I won't bore you, but basically, there is less than 1% of the population that is born with a tendon insertion architecture that gives them levers inside of their body. So this group of people is the group of people that go into the NFL. And they, by the time they're 16 years old, they might do a year of weight training and they already look like they're ready to go into the NFL. So, I found it funny when I was in high school. There was one of those genetic outliers at my high school. We worked out together. We were both 14 years old freshman year. And by the time we turned 15, I looked 15 and he looked 25. And he was in charge of buying the beer, of course. They didn't really card that hard back then. I'm 47, so it was a while ago. So when this happened to him, of course, everyone's asking him, what are you doing? Like, we're all eating the same thing, right? Like, are you, and like the whole steroid thing really didn't exist for high school kids because there was no internet back then. And it does now, by the way. So it was just sort of a bizarre situation. We're looking at this guy, and this guy looked like he was our dad. And yet a year before, he just looked like a regular 14-year-old kid. And so he says, I don't know what I'm doing. I just grow. He says, I smoke cigarettes. I don't think that's what's growing muscle. And I said, you're right, dude. That's not what's growing muscle. But I remember saying to him, I'm going to figure out why you can do this and almost nobody else can. And then you think about how people will look at a genetic outlier, a bodybuilder or an NFL player, and want to copy their workout. And I think that's so funny because these bodybuilders and these NFL players, they looked that way and performed that way when they were 15 or 16 years old. So when you've been training for 10 years and you're copying Deion Sanders, weight training program, you know why you don't look like Deion Sanders and you never will? It's because you're not Deion Sanders. And you don't have the genetics to stimulate the body like that guy. So when looking at that architecture and people who have those mechanical advantages, what they're really doing is they have these levers, these long tendons that act as like a catapult. So when they pull back, they have their pectoral tendon is basically spring loaded to push forward. And you look at how that works, they're using less muscle back here, but more what's called recycled energy. And you can really see this obviously in sprinters. And when you see a calf that's higher and a longer tendon, these are the people who are always going to have an advantage because they might have an extra 3 or 4% of energy that's propelling them forward that is just a stretch snap back. So they stretch the calf, and as it just springs back into position, no energy or calorie expenditure required. It's just the tendon snaps back into position, propels them forward at a greater level of energy. So, what the hell does that mean for the rest of us? It means that these people are training with rubber bands inside their body. Why don't we just take it external? Why don't we do exactly the same thing externally that they're doing internally? And then we can grow just like them, which is brought me to my second invention, X3. By loading the body in a way where we're strategically putting force in different positions so that we can take the most advantage of fatigue. So when I use X3, there's 200 pounds at the bottom, there's 300 pounds in the middle, and there's 550 pounds at the top. And as I do repetitions, eventually I can't get to that 550 pounds. So I then shorten the range of motion. So now I'm doing repetitions with 300 pounds, and then I can't get there anymore. And then somewhere in between 300 and 200, and then I can't do that anymore. And these are all what's called the stretched range of motion, also called the weaker range of motion. But it's when the body is trying to recruit more tissue, but is at a disadvantageous position. So by going to fatigue in sometimes 10 different positions as you're going through a set of exercise, you get that much more stimulus for growth without wearing yourself out, because it's more efficient. You just get to more fatigue in a shorter effort, and thereby can stimulate massive amounts of growth and really begin to change your body. Now, how does this connect with nutrition? When I launched this product, I was really excited because I was like, this is the absolute greatest training device ever created. At least that's what I thought. But some really smart people in the field have confirmed what I thought. So I really was just like, this is lightning in a bottle. Everybody's going to do phenomenal with this. When I put it out, I was right for about 50% of the people. 50% of the people, like, I'm growing faster than ever. I had guys that after 3 months are like, I think I'm done strength training because I'm as big as I ever wanted to be, and I actually was working out for 10 years and didn't get there, and now with 3 months of X3, I'm there. So I'm like going to adjust my workout now and just use X3 for like a maintenance perspective. Awesome. And then there's other people that are like, I'm doing exactly what you're telling me to do, but I'm not growing any muscle. Okay, what's your nutrition like? Oh, it's phenomenal. I love that question. Oh, my nutrition's great. Oh, tell me about what great is. And, any stupid answer you could fill in the blank with. But, I say, well, you need more protein than that. Or I get a lot of protein. I get like 50 grams a day. And you're like, oh, really? You should probably have 5 times that. So once reviewing the literature and showing that the literature demonstrates we need 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein, I started putting that out there. Now, I was always kind of ketogenic, low carb. I didn't call it that. It was just, I knew I had to have protein to grow muscle, and that was my priority. Didn't really think much about it beyond that. But once looking at the literature, 1 gram per pound of body weight, it's almost, now, of course, fat comes with protein in nature. There's really no room in your intestines for anything else if you want to have regular protein synthesis and being able to regenerate cells and basically be healthy. So I started looking at reading nutrition research really sucks because you run into a lot of survey studies, you run into a lot of biases, you run into studies that were funded by some nice sounding nutrition institute, which you find out is just a kind of a shell company which is funded by Coca-Cola or some other snack food company. So, and I get it, they're trying to do business, and hey, they've got people addicted, good for them. I just hope it's nobody here. Looking at that dynamic, okay, this is going to be difficult. I put the information out there that people really need to focus on animal protein, animal fats, and you really don't need anything else. In fact, the amount of carbohydrates, this is a direct quote from the AMA handbook on nutrition from 2005. They have not updated it since then. Says the amount of carbohydrates required for optimal health is apparently 0. So it doesn't even fit the definition for a macronutrient anymore. And as I started to promote that, I started getting so much hatred on the internet. And, the hatred came from the people who are sort of colluding with snack food companies or people who just don't like that answer. Because apparently people choose their news sources based on the news they like, not the news that is. And you guys all know what I'm talking about. So as disappointing as that was, I just realized I'm not going to stop talking about this because it's just the right answer, and anybody that doesn't like it can just kick rocks. Like, I don't care. And so that ended up sort of fueling the success for X3. Some people ask me, like, would it have been better if I didn't really promote ketogenic nutrition or carnivore nutrition? I don't know. Who cares? Like, this is just the right answer. And so, I mean, I kind of have like a Donald Trump attitude. Like, I don't really care what anybody thinks. I got to tell you the way it is. And then beyond that, we can figure it out from there. Now, I think sometimes when I say, I keep carbohydrates real low, maybe under 10 grams a day, some people just sort of slowly nod and go, not the answer I wanted to hear. And then other people are upset. But, ultimately, I don't think people going zero is palatable, funny word in this context, for most people, but I think it's easier for most people to get close to it. And we've had a lot of success, and now 400,000 units are in circulation of X3, and I have a pretty good connection to about 20% of that group. 10% is in a forum on Facebook, and then about another 10% just regularly emails the company and sort of gives updates on general health, things like that, gives us before and after pictures, and they're just sort of excited fans. Over time, though, the people who are more strict are dramatically more successful. Just something for everybody to keep in mind. I'm supposed to leave about 20 minutes for questions. I got through this a little quicker than I thought, so any questions?
Yeah, great. Finally getting to meet you. I read your book several years ago. I've been using
Okay.
X3 for a number of years. I was a competitive weightlifter 50 years ago, so I'm 70 now. And I found trying to keep up with that weightlifting, I continue to get injured.
Yeah.
I've had no injuries using the X3 part. So I like to use it every day.
Sure.
Inspiration for me. So if I continue on one day, maybe when I'm 80, I'll look like you. So
Yeah,
that's my goal.
it's entirely possible. Like when I did this to myself, people said, "Oh, you're never going to gain muscle past 40 years old," and I heard people say that, and these were self-appointed fitness gurus who, they think they know a lot, but they don't really know anything. And so I just okay, I'll put that to the test. The reason, beyond the genetics that I was talking about, the tendon insertion points, so basically everybody can grow like an NFL player with this. 99 point something percent of the population cannot grow significantly with weights. Like, they might get the beginner gains in the first 2 weeks or 2 months or whatever, but you probably have better genetics because you took that sport further. But ultimately, the other giant issue is injuries. Like, where do the injuries happen in a bench press? Is it here or is it here? It's at the bottom. Like, people tear their pec or they tear their tricep at the bottom. If you're trying to use the same weight throughout when you have 7 times greater capacity here than you have here, and that's what I say, my sort of elevator pitch when somebody's like, "Oh, tell me about X3." I'm like, well, when you're 7 times stronger here than here, why would you ever lift a weight? It doesn't make any sense. So what we need is a weight that changes and is accommodating to our biomechanics. That way we can exhaust uniformly. We have an even level of difficulty throughout the entire movement. Therefore, we end up stimulating more musculature. And can someone hurt themselves with X3? Yeah, if you do it wrong. Like there's some people who try and be really explosive, and all the instruction I've ever given is to do the opposite of that, nice, slow, and controlled. But yeah, I mean, it happens. But I'm happy for your success.
Questions?
Yeah.
Can you just touch on muscle hypertrophy, and is there any advantage in using blood flow restriction with the X3? And then two, could you comment on, say, the difference between Osteostrong and something like ARX?
Okay, one at a time. What was the first one?
Blood flow restriction?
Blood flow restriction. So what he's talking about is people put on tourniquets like on their arms and legs, so the blood pools in the musculature. So, like let's say you're doing a whatever exercise, the blood kind of goes into the tricep and then it can't flow back. And when the body sees that it's not getting the return blood pressure, the diastolic's different, then, and there's some nuance here, and it's a very small amount, but your body re-regulates myostatin, which is a protein designed to stop you from growing muscle. So the question is, okay, like, is that efficient? Is that always a good thing? It is always a good thing because myostatin is ultimately going to do its job for the majority of your life because you're not going to walk around with tourniquets. The problem with the tourniquet is the body knows there's a tourniquet there, which is why you can only train light. So while you change the set point for myostatin slightly, you're not able to get any serious exercise done because you're training so light. So you really, you gain a little bit in one area and you lose a lot in another area, so it's sort of a net zero effort. Like you don't get anything out of it. But instead of using blood flow restriction, if you just keep constant tension when you're exercising, so like if I'm doing, if I'm doing a chest press, so what I want to do is keep constant tension. If I keep constant tension, the same thing will happen, except I can actually train heavy. So with this band at my height, I'm 6 feet tall, I push away from myself. This is 250 pounds, and it's maybe 100 back here. So I can go through this range of motion and keep constant tension. You notice I don't let the band go slack. So as long as I'm doing that, I'm getting exactly the same benefit with the added benefit of the heavy loading, which is really way more important. And so I can get the full stimulus. Yeah.
And I guess the last thing is just when you look at isometric versus eccentric movement, like with ARX versus Osteostrong.
So ARX is more like this. It's variable resistance. It doesn't do what Osteostrong does. What Osteostrong does is very specifically loads the bone. I know their marketing says they do something for bone density. The marketing for all sorts of fitness stuff says it does something for bone density, and none of that's true. You really need high forces in very specific positions. So anything that goes full range is not going to do that, because what you can handle in that optimized range of motion, like even in a squat, here's the 120 degree angle. Like I can explode from here and jump, but nobody goes to jump and starts down here. Like you wouldn't go anywhere. You could be theatrical about it, but still, it's not an advantage. So, Osteostrong. Yes. Next question.
I guess related to Osteostrong, what upper limit exists, or healthy upper limit exists to bone density, bone strength? Is that something
So it's just a little like the rest of the body. Like, you know, a human body can only hold so much muscle. There's only so much room for mineral density. So like, I've seen 2.3 standard deviations above normal bone density. That's what I'm at. And I've seen that in some of the most elite athletes in the world. You don't see much beyond that. So 2.3 standard deviations above zero. If I see anything that's above that, I can find the error. Like, for example, somebody gets a scan and they left like a metal bracelet on or something like that. Or they had or they have like a metal plate put in their leg or something. Yes, I've just never seen beyond 2.3 standard deviations without something that causes an error. So I do believe there is an upper limit. Yeah. So before the next question, I want to make sure that everybody understands. So like very light loading here, which is where, of course, the musculature and the joints are all compromised. Hey guys. And as I deliver more force is allowed to be put on my body. So like 250 pounds here and maybe like 100 if I'm just past the slack point. So it's accommodating in that I can match my biomechanics to what I'm doing, and I can truly go to fatigue. And that's basically when you're lifting a regular weight, you don't really go to fatigue, you just go to the point where your joints hurt. In fact, my favorite quote from Peter Attia, he says, "I really don't care for strength training because it overloads joints and underloads muscle." And if anybody knows him, by the way, I really need to get on that guy's podcast because that's like the best quote that explains what I'm trying to show everyone and what I'm trying to get everybody to embrace with variable resistance. By the way, if anybody wants to read more about the science, go to like Google Scholar and type in variable resistance exercise. Because there's, I don't know, probably 20 really good papers and about another 20 like so-so quality papers, all coming to the same conclusion that this is really the most proper way to train. Next.
Hello, I'm also one of the users of X3, and I'm
Awesome.
one of those 10% of people in Facebook group. So there's some people who are like coaching and creating programs for high volume training. So X3 is usually the recommended exercises. You do one set, go to full failure, and then move to another exercise. Meanwhile, in these other programs, there's like you do 4 sets, and then you do circuit training, and like it just takes like 1.5 hours. What do you think about those programs? Are they like experimental, or is that the next stage of X3 program going to be?
So you kind of answered your own question. Yeah, the X3 was designed to make people as strong as possible. I didn't really focus so much on muscular size for 2 reasons. If we were to make the population healthier, there's a lot of indications for strength being curative to a lot of different things. Muscle mass in itself, it doesn't really mean much. And it's also not studied very often. Like if you look at strength research, you'll find hundreds of thousands of papers. You look at hypertrophy research, maybe 6 or 7 interesting papers per year. Like it's just not, it doesn't, muscle mass doesn't treat a disease. It's also kind of hard to measure because body composition is hard to measure. I know somebody will say, oh, DEXA is wonderful. No, DEXA is shit. In fact, I can take a DEXA scan, I can drink 16 ounces of water, and it'll tell me in the 15 minutes between the 2 scans, I gained a pound of muscle. Like, basically, DEXA knows fat and not fat, which is really a lousy measurement because we have a lot more going on in our body than fat and not fat, like water, for example. So that's just another reason why it just sort of, I feel like a lot of the scientific community just sort of rolls their eyes at hypertrophy. But I do realize that a lot of people are interested in it. So what ended up happening, and I know who you're talking about, like the different sort of more volume style programs. I'm doing a volume style, like an official one for X3, which will have you exercising a lot more than the standard programming, but the standard programming is still the most superior for strength. So if you want strength and size, there'll be another program for that.
Got it. Another question, since you mentioned DEXA scan. I did DEXA scan and my bone density is at like the top something 0.1%, and
Good.
my blood tests also show good calcium.
Okay.
And I have cut out dairy for like multiple years out of my life. I'm just eating mostly meat. Where's the calcium coming from? Why do I have strong bones? We were told that you need milk to have strong bones.
Yeah,
going on?
you were told a lot of stupid things. Everybody was, all of us, our mothers especially, and they repeat all that stupid stuff all the time, especially Christmas and Easter. So there's enough, more than enough calcium in just regular muscle meat. You don't need milk. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger once said, "Milk is for babies. When you grow up, you have to drink beer." I think he was kidding when he said that. But you don't need milk. You don't need dairy of any kind. And as I said earlier, calcium is the only mineral the body self-regulates. So the less of it you take in, the more it preserves and recycles. And there's more than enough in muscle meat to get all you need to have very high bone density. The biggest driving, this is your question, the biggest driving factor with bone density is the force you're putting through bone. And you're probably doing a lot of that.
Last question
Yeah.
about stretching. My brother, after like working out for all his life, at 6-month period, he had a lot of muscle mass growth. And I'm asking, what are you doing? And he says, I'm doing calisthenics and I'm being consistent. I join his sessions and he's doing half of the session, he's just stretching. And I'm asking, why are you doing that? He says, not to get injured. Otherwise, he gets injured very fast and he can't exercise for a month. And I saw you post something about stretching and muscle growth. Can you talk more about that? What's going on there?
So it's a complicated subject, but high level, if you stretch before you work out, you shut muscle off. So you'll have a much worse workout if you stretch beforehand. I know that sounds crazy, but there's tons of papers that explain this. What you want to do is you want to stimulate muscle growth and then stretch after. And in fact, the chapter in the book about hyperplasia is what we're talking about. So like when I train chest, I'll do, I'm experimenting with the volume, so let's say I do 5 sets or something like that. Then I'll get in a doorway after I'm done and kind of peel my arms back and try and get the muscle as stretched as possible. So this is referred to in bird research, avian research, as a bag theory. And it's been proven to be correct. It actually works way better for birds than it does for humans, unfortunately. But by first filling the muscle with blood by training it, and then by stretching it afterward, you're putting a lot of tension on the casing of the muscle. This is what's called the muscle fascia. And when you put tension on the muscle fascia, it can allow, so basically when you let the tension off, there's some slack in that bag that holds the muscle in place. And when that happens, the cells sense that and they start to split. So you actually get more muscle cells. This is for a long time, this was thought to be impossible, but they've now proven it. And it's so this is called either hyperplasia, like I call it the hyperplasia protocol, but it's also called stretch-mediated hypertrophy. It's in itself, like, was it your brother that's doing the calisthenics?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a much harder way to grow muscle, but you can grow muscle doing that by training a muscle and then stretching it, training it with like lightweight and then stretching it. What we're doing with X3, if you do the same kind of thing, is you're doing a very heavy resistance workout that's matched to your biomechanics via variable resistance. So you get the best stimulus, and then when you stretch after that, then you sort of get it all. So you should probably read that chapter, the hyperplasia.
I will.
Yeah, awesome.
And follow up. What do you think about massage after working out? Is it the stretch thing, like similar to that, or no research? No.
I mean, I don't want like a water bottle thrown at me from like a massage therapist, but it probably depends how you feel. Like, I don't get massages.
Okay.
That's just, yeah.
All right.
Like, it's, if I had like a biomechanics problem, if I had muscles that were sort of binding up after a workout, like sometimes, here's a perfect example. I have a friend who trains really hard, like once every 6 months, because he says, I'm going to get back into it. I'm going to get back into like, football condition. The guy played football at KU, and his dedication is awesome for like a good hour. And then there's going to be another 6 months of him not doing anything. So one of these days he said, hey, I'm going to use X3, but I really think I need bigger trapezius muscles. So I'm just going to do heavy shrugs. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think you should do that because you really want to hit everything. So the protagonist and antagonist, I mean, there's a tensegrity going on in the body. You don't just want to like jump into like the one muscle that supports your neck, because if you get a cramp or something like that, or, especially you haven't trained for 6 months. So like most good friends, he didn't listen at all. And I mean, he completely knotted himself up. Like it looked like his head and neck had like moved over to the right. Like, you ever see somebody walk into like a chiropractic office and you look at them like, oh wow, you're in the right place. So like that guy needs massage all the time. I'm like water, man. I got nothing wrong with me. So I don't have any biomechanics issues. That's why I don't do that. Okay, you got to let somebody else ask questions.
Yes, I was just going to say thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I'm not going to ask any questions, actually.
Okay.
My name is Roxanne, and I just have a testimonial, and I also want to show my appreciation to you. So I've been following you for over 3, almost 4 years, and in my world, you're a huge celebrity. So I'm
Thanks.
so honored to be here in front of you.
Thanks for setting the bar low.
Yes. And so yes, and following you on Facebook, I've learned so much from you. And even though I've been a nurse for many years and I'm into regenerative medicine, epigenetics, and the whole 9 yards, I actually, because of you, I shifted from being plant-based vegan for 18 years all the way to keto, and it's changed my life. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Yes.
That makes me so happy.
Absolutely. I've just learned so much from you. I really have. And so I also, purchased the X3 bar, and one day I hope to be as big as you. I'm working on it.
I don't know.
I'm
Just
working on
imagine me with like a blonde wig. I don't know. You can stop short of that.
Okay, there you go. Okay,
All
and then
right.
one last thing was, and this is even bigger. I'm postmenopausal, so I'm almost 62. And a few years back, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis. And that's when I was introduced to OsteoStrong and here in Austin. And I was very religious about it. And that's how I ended up purchasing the X3 bar and all that. And very religious about the Osteostrong, and I have to say I had a DEXA scan before and after, and so I've totally reversed my osteoporosis, like not even osteopenia. And that's huge.
Awesome.
That is huge. And so I'm just a true believer. And now I actually work in, hormone clinics, helping postmenopausal women, and I'm a huge proponent to Osteostrong. So just wanted to thank you for the science and all the technology behind it.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'm out of time, but I'm going to keep answering questions until that hook comes to pull me backstage. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time. I have another hormone question. I saw your podcast a few months ago, and you mentioned the new oral form of testosterone. And
Yes.
at first blush, I was thinking, how can that possibly compete going through the GI tract versus, a weekly injection right into the blood system? I mean, I just don't see how that could even compare to injections.
So different method of absorption and different dosage. I won't go in. I could give a multi-hour lecture on testosterone replacement therapy and how almost everybody's protocol is really wrong. What we want to do, the most important thing that was previously either ignored or poorly understood, was the fact that we have our up and down regulation of testosterone is based on circadian rhythm, the day. When we get up, when we start our day, when we move around, when we start talking, walking, exercising, whatever, and then when we wind down our day. So basically, the curve, if you're looking at two axes here, it's time. This is the start of the day, your testosterone, and this is men and women. It goes up, like as soon as you wake up, it starts going up, kind of peaks around noon or 1 or 2, assuming you get up at 8 o'clock. If you get up at a different time, same curve, just slid one way or the other. And then it starts to taper off, and like 3, 4, 5 o'clock, it's almost down to very low levels. That's how it happens naturally in the body. And any protocol that is going to mirror that is going to be absolutely superior, because the body will not, if it mirrors that, it will not upregulate sex hormone binding globulin, SHBG. So sex hormone being testosterone, binding meaning here's testosterone, it grabs a hold of it and makes it worthless.
Right.
So you don't want SHBG. There's always going to be a certain level of it in your body, but you don't want a high level of it. So regular TRT boosts SHBG within 2 months. So people get testosterone replacement therapy, they do great for 2 months, and then nothing ever happens again. And they're just sort of taking a level of testosterone and then the body's canceling it out. So by mirroring the circadian rhythm and keeping the up and down regulations in one day, that never happens. And you keep getting the benefit every day you're on it.
So superior dosing, essentially.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last one.
All right, so I'm 71, long-term tennis player, just diagnosed with synovitis in both hips. So you tell me what X3 is going to do for me going forward, and hopefully continuing my longevity in tennis.
So I'm not your physician. I'm also a researcher because I don't have patience for patients. I can't legally give you any medical advice. I can speak generically.
Right.
And the problem is, I would need to look at your biomechanics. I mean, we would need to, after this, let's get together and, I want to see, are you able to do, how low can you go without any pain? Can you get down here? Can you get absolutely, right. So there are different approaches based on your biomechanics. And the best results I've seen is when you find a good physical therapist that's willing to work with you to treat that. And then you bring your X3 to them and say, hey, I'm going to start strength training with this. Help me develop and point this in a therapeutic and curative direction. Okay. But you know, I'm not, like I said, I'm a researcher.
All right.
I'm not licensed to actually give you any
All right.
advice.
I'll see you afterwards. Thank
Yep.
you.
Awesome. Thanks.